So people are asking, how can Democrats fight back? And I think this is an example. I did not expect this from Senator Van Hollen, of all people. Definitely didn't have this on my radar. But he took an initiative to go to El Salvador to speak to Abrego. Abrego is the young man from Maryland that was deported to the El Salvador prison. He's the one that Donald Trump says is a part of the MS-13 gang. The Supreme Court said this is not the case and that he needs to come back to the U.S. and face due process. Trump and, of course, El Salvador's president said there's nothing that they can do. I told you that's false. The U.S. government is paying El Salvador right now millions of dollars to have that prison, to keep people there. So you do have to understand, if you follow the money, you'll see what this is really all about. But Chris Van Hollen did go there. I want to bring this up here. He had a press conference right after. Let's get into a little bit of this, where the family members are present, and then we'll get into these statements from Donald Trump.
It's good to be home. Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too. We're joined by his wife, Jennifer, by his mother, Cecilia, by his brother, Cesar, and thank all of the rest of you who are joining us in solidarity with the Constitution and Kilmar. Look, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I want to be as clear as possible about what this is about and what it's not about. So I'm going to read the remarks that I wrote on the plane ride home. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. And it's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
Yes.
The Fourth Circuit put it very clearly in its strong opinion yesterday, and I quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it is not hard at all. The government, in this case, the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from the courthouses still hold dear."
Plus, also, Chris Van Hollen is living proof. See how easily it was for him to go there, right? So obviously, like I said, the Supreme Court said you have to bring him back and he has to face due process here in the U.S. They could bring him back if they wanted to, right? Now, Chris Van Hollen, like I said, he's usually not the type of politician to go out and do something like this. He usually kind of just skirts by, but he does represent the state of Maryland, and I would think he may have a re-election coming up pretty soon. So keep that in mind. But it's interesting, the people who are silent or are just not around, right? This is Abrego right here. You can see the image. We'll get a closer up when we go to the next clip. But this is Van Hollen meeting with him here.
They summed up the issue at stake perfectly. And that's why the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Now, the Trump administration wants to flat out lie about what this case is about. They want to change the subject. They want to make it about something else. And they are flouting the orders from the Federal District Court, the Fourth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court to facilitate his return. That's why I traveled to El Salvador, leaving here on Wednesday. And I want to express my gratitude to members of my family and members of my staff who agreed that we all must be prepared to take risks because of the current risk to our Constitution itself.
Okay, so we're not going to go into that entire speech. It is fairly long, but as you can see, the theme, again, I said, is law and order. And you see Chris Van Hollen was the one to visit El Salvador, to go visit Abrego Garcia. Now, he was also on Face the Nation, and I want to show you something that the media has tried to do. The media tried to make it seem like when he went to that visit that they were sitting around just getting drunk, drinking margaritas. Guys, I'm telling you, there's nothing more deceptive than corporate media, right? Because whatever they put out there, most people tend to believe it. Now, there are people moving away from corporate media and seeking out, other means, whether it's independent media on YouTube or Substack, right? But whoever gets the narrative out first is usually the one that people believe. And so if you're on the other side, you're basically playing defense, right? So listen to this. One of the images that they tried to portray.
I want to show our viewers some pictures that the president of El Salvador, Bukele, posted showing you and Abrego Garcia sitting around what appears to be margaritas. You have blamed him for trying to deceive people with props. After he posted those images, he also posted, quote, "I love chess." Do you have any concerns that the Salvadoran government used you as a pawn to make their point that Abrego Garcia is doing well and that he should stay where he is?
No, in fact, the El Salvadorian government tried really hard not to let me see him, but I think they realized that that was not a good look at the end of the day. I had press conferences in El Salvador with local press and made the point that El Salvador was violating international law by not allowing anyone to reach him, not his wife, not his lawyers, nobody. They realized that was a bad look. So I'm glad I met him. That was the purpose of my visit. They go to great lengths to deceive people. And that's what you saw, because they got these government guys essentially told the waiters to bring these drinks that appear to look like margaritas to the table. No one touched them. I can go into the details about how their whole scheme was set up. But the reality is, if you look at the photos when I first sat down and the ones at the end, you can see that that was all staged. They're trying to create the impression that, this is a guy in paradise, when in fact he's been in one of the most notorious prisons in the world.
I want to show.
So you see the narrative that they're trying to get out there, right? Like, oh, he went to go visit Abrego and they sat around getting drunk, drinking margaritas and all this stuff. Like, again, a story can tell 1,000 lies if you let it. And I noticed this. I thought this was pretty interesting. I had the railroad workers on this show when they were trying to go on strike. This bulletin came through. I still get their emails. Special bulletin, RWU resolution to bring Brother Kilmar home. This is coming from the Railroad Workers United. So they are calling for his release. It says the International Steering Committee of Railroad Workers United passed a resolution to bring home Brother Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a legally protected immigrant and SMART union member. So this is something I don't know if everyone's aware of. He's a member of the union. He's a union member. Kilmar was deported by the Trump administration without due process to a Salvadorian mega prison, despite holding legal protections still in place at the time of his apprehension by ICE. It goes on to say here, the SMART union, Kilmar's community, and his allies are demanding Kilmar's safe return, an end to his and his family's suffering, and a defense of due process, the foundation of fair treatment on and off the job. RWU stands in solidarity with this call and urges all union members to defend the rights of workers born outside the U.S. who are now so unjustly targeted. So that's from the Railroad Workers United, ladies and gentlemen. So I was kind of shocked when I got that email from them, because I'm still on their email list from when they were on the show before. But let's get into some of the other things. There are other stories that have come out about Abrego. I think we need to share those as well. One accusing him of beating his wife, another one accusing him of trafficking, and then we'll get into this picture
now, NBC News
that Donald Trump floated around about the tattoos. Listen to this.
Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian, NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuaid, and New York Times reporter Jeremy Peters. Ken, we'll start off with you. What do these documents released yesterday prove or not when it comes to what we know and still don't know about Abrego Garcia's criminal history?
Well, they don't say anything about a criminal history, Allie. They do speak to the fact that he may have been detained in a murder investigation some period back, although he disputes that. And they show that his wife filed a civil restraining order in connection with domestic violence allegations, and then later dropped that case. But what these documents do is shed light on why the Prince George's County Gang Unit and the Department of Homeland Security believed that he is an MS-13 gang member. And they lay out a series of pieces of evidence. One, that he was arrested at a Home Depot alongside a confirmed gang member with a violent record. Two, that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie that had insignia on it that the Prince George's County Police believed was associated with a gang.
Why is it always Chicago Bulls? Can someone answer that one for me? It's always the Bulls.
And so it sort of fills out the picture a little bit more about why not only an immigration judge, but an appeal in the immigration system determined that there was sufficient evidence that he was an MS-13 gang member. Now, obviously, he disputes that. His lawyers dispute that. And immigration courts are not criminal courts. There was no proof beyond a reasonable doubt here. But the question of whether he's deportable is not a question of whether he's a criminal. Those are two separate things. If the Department of Homeland Security determined that he was an MS-13 gang member and he was in the country illegally, then he was deportable. Whether he should be in a prison in El Salvador is another question here. But these documents do shed light on why DHS believes he is an MS-13 gang member.
This wouldn't even be an issue if we just followed due process, right? We wouldn't even hear about this story. This wouldn't even be an issue if we just followed due process in this country. You wouldn't even hear about Abrego right now. Just keeping it real. Because if he would have gone through the process, then they would have said, oh, okay, it looks like documentation shows that either you are protected or you're not protected. And that would have been the end of it. But here we are. We'll go on a little bit more here.
And Kelly, there had been many questions about why it took so long for DOJ and DHS to release these documents. Ultimately, they did it last night. But why now?
Well, it's an interesting question because clearly these documents were in the possession, were a part of the kind of planning of this case, and presumably could have been released earlier. It may be that they felt enough public pressure because of the interest in this case, the questions being raised, the way that Abrego Garcia and his family, the advocates for him, had positioned him. They do a lot of scrutiny here from the White House about Maryland man when they want to argue that he is unlawfully formally a resident of Maryland and won't come back. So perhaps the timing was to counter some of that, to try to recapture a bit of the narrative. But we don't have a specific answer as to why they did not produce that information immediately, because certainly those questions were asked every day by reporters and others involved to look for more information about why he had been swept up in this and what was the basis, especially because of the rhetoric from the administration where they called him not only a member of MS-13, but a foreign terrorist because of the designation the administration has put on MS-13. They accused him of being involved in human trafficking, a lot of things that are very potent words in the political climate, and they didn't have specific information to back that up. So it may have been a response to the public pressure. It certainly fills in some of the picture, and people will take from that what they want to make of his status. And certainly there is the ongoing pressure from people like Senator Van Hollen, of Democrat of Maryland, who are trying to keep this in the public eye.
They probably really should have had that information handy. This is hilarious. Birdfinger says, if they deport Scottie Pippen, I'm revolting. my God. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this, I think, could have been cleared up if they would have shown that information, I don't know, like in the beginning and not now. And then there's this take here from Donald Trump. Now, this picture is going pretty wild on social media. Let's go ahead and bring this in. Trump's tattoo theory to prove MS-13 gang ties. What experts say about president's renewed focus on ink. So Donald Trump posted this picture, and I don't know, can I click on the picture? No, I'm sorry. But he posted this photo of the hand. I guess it's supposed to be Abrego's hand, and it has a series of tattoos on his hand. You see this, right? And then this part right here, there are letters. There's MS-13, so MS-13. That is not on his hand. Those letters there were obviously photoshopped. I saw some people on social media didn't realize that. Like they thought they were like, look, he has the letters on his hand. I'm like, no, that's a Photoshop. That's Donald Trump, I guess, trying to tell you this symbol means M, this means S, this means 1, this means 3, etc. So this started quite a buzz, right? And I just want to show you what the experts are saying here. It says that experts say the practice is flawed and misleading. So it goes into the case here. It says that this is the hand of the man that Democrats feel should be brought back into the United States because he is such a fine and innocent person. They said he is not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. So again, as I was saying, he does not have the letters MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. That is a Photoshop. The tattoos, he does have tattoos on his knuckles, but not those letters. So I just wanted to make that clear. But this is what the law enforcement is saying, okay? Multiple law enforcement officials and experts have warned against Trump's administration growing reliance on tattoos to determine gang affiliation, especially in the case of Venezuelan gang Tren de Arruga. A tattoo itself is never sufficient evidence to prove a person is a member of a criminal group. That's coming from Joseph Kinney. He's the chief of detectives at the NYPD. Goes on to say here, court documents and investigative reports indicate that U.S. immigration officials are now using a 10-point scoring system under an internal guide, where gang-related tattoos can earn 4 points to determine deportability under the Alien Enemies Act. 8 points are sufficient for expedient removal without a hearing. So you see this? 8 points is required to have an expedited removal without a hearing. In one case, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, a Venezuelan makeup artist, was deported to El Salvador based solely on tattoos that read mom and dad inside crowns, according to the New York Times report. While tattoos such as clock, skulls, and train imagery have been linked to Tren de Arruga, the 5 Venezuelan experts, including police officials, academics, and a journalist, told the New York Times that tattoos are not formal indicators of gang membership in Venezuelan street culture, where ink is common among young men regardless of affiliation. So again, when we talk about law and order, none of this would have been an issue if due process would have been followed. Then you wouldn't even have this, well, should he be in El Salvador? Should he not? Like, you wouldn't even have that as a question if due process was followed. And I'm greatly, greatly concerned. And I brought this up before. Right now, the attack is on those that may or may not be here illegally, may or may not have participated in criminal activity. But what's stopping Donald Trump's administration from going after what they consider to be domestic terrorists? That could include people that were part of the pro-Palestinian marches. That could include people that were part of BLM. You just don't know. You don't know how far this is going to go. So I think if law and order were followed properly, we wouldn't even have the situation to begin with. Let's get to the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Trash Panda says general strike. The Oracle said if the Dems had any real connection to the working class, leading in this moment would be intuitive. Thank you, P. Smith. What about innocent Blacks in the USA prisons? That's a good question, right? Of course, they're not trying to have that happen. They're not trying to have that happen, right? There's a whole innocence project that tries to release prisoners that they believe are wrongfully imprisoned, because the government is not trying to do that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.